That's the truth. And the strangest part is nobody in the Rick Ross camp is willing to say it out loud. For 2 decades, the biggest boss in hip-hop sold you a fantasy the size of a Miami skyline. Private jets. Emerald chains. A mansion so massive he claimed he mowed the lawn himself just for fun. He wasn't just a rapper. He was a monument. And monuments are not supposed to crack. Yet here we are, in the ugliest week of his career, watching that monument shed pieces in public, one clip at a time, one photo at a time, one embarrassing receipt at a time. What you are about to see is not a beef. It is not a diss track. It is the slow-motion demolition of the biggest boss persona hip-hop has ever built. And by the time this is done, you will understand why Rick Ross may never fully recover from this one. Welcome back to the channel. If you like your rap breakdowns without the sugarcoating, tap that subscribe button, smash the like, and stick around, because the deeper we go into this Rozay situation, the wilder it gets. And trust me, we are going all the way in. Let us start with the moment the mask slipped. A journalist casually mentioned to him that a quick internet search puts his net worth at $150 million. A simple question. A number he himself has quietly leaned on for years. Instead of a clean confirmation, instead of a proud yes, Rozay laughed it off with a lazy little quip. Something breezy. Something dismissive. Something that sounded like a man dodging a receipt he could not produce. In any other year, that non-answer would have played as swagger. In this year, in this climate, on this internet, it played like a man caught red-handed. And the clip is now everywhere. Because the second Rick Ross gave that answer, the audience realized something uncomfortable. The biggest boss in the room did not want to talk about the money. And when a man who built his entire career on money suddenly does not want to talk about the money, you pay attention. Because it is not one scandal. Not one lawsuit. Not one bad interview. What is happening right now is a slow drip. A leak. Each embarrassment small enough to laugh off on its own, but stacked together into a wave he cannot stop. Fake diamond accusations. Fake watch accusations. Crystal ice. Iced out chains that sparkle a little too orange under the lights. A jeweler community that now openly jokes about him. A commercial flight photo that shattered the mythology. Half-priced concert tickets. Unsold seats. A canceled album. A former friend now his loudest enemy. And underneath all of it, the ghost of a corrections officer uniform Rozay spent 20 years pretending never existed. You want to know how bad it has gotten? Let us walk it step by step. Because if you think this is just a bad week for the boss, you have not been paying attention. Start with the jewelry. For years he flexed a wrist that looked like a museum. Emerald-encrusted Audemars. Cuban links thicker than a forearm. Rings that could double as speed bumps. And for a long time, the industry played along, because when Rick Ross walked into a room, the assumption was simple. Everything on him is real. Everything on him is paid for. Everything on him is boss. Then one jeweler, one very specific jeweler, decided to open his mouth. He said on camera that a particular watch had been fake. Not overpriced. Not aftermarket. Fake. He explained that this specific model was only ever produced twice in history. One in a 37mm case. One in a 41mm case. He said he personally knew both real owners. And neither one of those owners was the rapper from Miami. That is not shade. That is a paternity test. And here is the thing about accusations like that. They are too specific to shrug off. He could laugh at a general critic. He could dismiss a random hater. But a jeweler dropping serial number level detail on live camera is a whole different weapon. Because now every photo Rozay has ever posted, every red carpet close-up, every studio shot of his wrist, becomes evidence in a trial he never agreed to stand in. He tried to swat it away with a joke. He claimed he had talked to every jeweler in Miami who deals in fake diamonds, and that the piece on his wrist was actually a legit AP loaded with green emeralds, and that the whole thing was just him having fun. Cute answer. Weak answer. Because the internet does not care about vibes. The internet cares about receipts. And the receipts, right now, are not landing on his side. Now stack the flight on top of it. This is the moment that broke the dam. He was photographed standing at an airport gate, hoodie pulled up, boarding a commercial flight like anybody else in the boarding group. Not a private terminal. Not a hangar. A regular gate. And the internet lost its mind. Because Rick Ross is the man who has been telling us for 2 decades that he only flies private. He is the man who once said he made himself a promise, decades ago, that he would not charter a jet until he could buy one outright. He is the man who framed his private jet as an investment, a milestone, a monument to 20-plus years of hustle. So when the biggest boss showed up in a boarding line with the rest of us, the mythology cracked in real time. He tried to explain. He said the jet is being upgraded with a high-end connectivity system. He said he chose to fly commercial to Colombia to party with his old friend Trick Daddy. He joked that when he is back on 6-figure flights, he is popping bottles. On paper, that explanation is completely fine. Planes get serviced all the time. Millionaires take commercial flights all the time. But that is exactly the trap he built for himself. When your entire brand is limitless success, a reasonable explanation sounds like a confession. Because you were never supposed to have reasonable moments. You were supposed to be a myth. And myths do not board group for. That is the trap of a persona built on excess. It has to stay flawless. The second it slips, the audience treats the slip as the real story, and the years of consistency as the performance. And right now, Rozay is caught inside that exact trap. He is not just a rapper anymore. He is a plaintiff in a court of public perception, and the internet has already reached a verdict. Then came the comedians. Uncle Murda took a swing. He cracked that the Miami rapper looked so depressed to be flying with quote-unquote you junkies. Ross fired back, joking that Uncle Murda had never really killed anything and offering him and his kids a free teeth cleaning, a jab at the Uncle Murda smile. On any other week, that exchange is harmless trash talk. On this week, stacked against every other embarrassment closing in at once, it lands with the weight of a piano falling out of a window. But you know who did not need this week to get his shots off? DMX. Years ago, when a room full of people asked DMX to name the rappers who impressed him, he went quiet. Then he pivoted to the Maybach Music founder with a shrug. He said he was all right, but that all he ever really rapped about was eating and smoking. He asked, at some point, how much can you eat? How much weed can you smoke? How many Maybachs do you actually need? The clip has been floating around for years, buried under years of commercial dominance. But the moment the image cracked, that clip came sprinting back. And this time, it stuck. Because the DMX critique is not a diss. It is a diagnosis. It is the argument that beneath the voice, beneath the aura, beneath the mansion shots, there was never actually that much there. For 20 years, the commercial success drowned that critique out. Now, with the image itself under fire, the critique is getting a second life. And Ross has no way to unring that bell. Then there is the name itself. The stage name Rick Ross was borrowed. Freeway Ricky Ross, the real-life trafficker whose story predates the rapper by years, has always claimed that the Miami rapper lifted his name and elements of his public image without permission. Freeway said, on camera, that whenever he shows up somewhere, the rapper tends to vanish. The dispute escalated into a copyright lawsuit in 2010. A strange, mostly forgotten footnote for casual fans, but a footnote that turns out to be crucial. Because when the mask starts slipping, everybody in the audience reaches back into the archive. And the archive on Rozay is loaded. You know what else is in that archive? The corrections officer photograph. The one he spent years denying. When reporters first asked him about it in 2008, his answer was a flat, no, that is not true. Then a photograph surfaced. A 19-year-old William Roberts, smiling in a corrections officer uniform. Time-stamped. Undeniable. No lyric, no diss, no interview could have done what that one photo did. Because it turned an accusation into an artifact. And artifacts do not go away. Fast forward to now, and he tells a softer, self-deprecating version. He confirms he was a corrections officer. He says it happened when he was around 20. He claims he barely made it through training, maybe 4 months, before he was let go for being chronically late. Cute story. Almost charming. Only problem, the paperwork disagrees. Public employment records reportedly show that William Roberts worked as a corrections officer in Miami-Dade County for closer to 18 months, not 4. Records show he was hired in December of 1995 and resigned in 1997. Records show a solid attendance history. Records show an annual salary of roughly $26,000. So the story he tells and the paper trail behind him do not match. And once you notice one story does not match the paper trail, you start wondering how many others might not match either. Now roll all of that forward into the biggest fracture of them all. Because this next section, the section that ties every single piece together, is the reason this whole story is exploding right now. And that reason has a name. That name is Drake. For 15 years, Rozay and Drake were one of the most reliable pairings in hip-hop. Not just featured on each other's songs. Not just chart partners. Actual friends. The boss said publicly that out of every rapper on earth, Drake was his favorite artist to work with on a track. They talked about a full joint album. It even had a working name, While Low. Fans have been asking about that record for years. It never came. And in hindsight, it never coming is its own quiet tragedy stitched inside the middle of this whole story. Because the biggest streaming song of his entire career, the only song of his to ever crack 1 billion Spotify plays, is a Drake collaboration. Money in the Grave. Stack that up against Aston Martin Music, Stay Schemin', the DJ Khaled Anchor Records, and the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. His biggest commercial peaks are not solo peaks. His biggest peaks are Drake peaks. That is the fact that makes this next part so brutal. Because in early 2024, he made a decision. He picked a side. He climbed on a Future and Metro Boomin album, We Don't Trust You, appearing on the track Everyday Hustle. That same album carried the Kendrick Lamar verse that lit the modern rap war on fire. Then Rozay went public with his support for Kendrick's diss track. Then he unfollowed Drake on social media. A tiny click. A quiet gesture. And an unmistakable declaration that 15 years of partnership had just been formally torn up. Drake did not stay quiet for long. On push-ups, Drake pointed at his age, then dropped a line that stung more than any insult, because it was not an insult. It was a fact. He pointed out that a huge chunk of the Miami rapper's biggest Billboard hits, I'm on One, Money in the Grave, Lemon Pepper Freestyle, all had one common ingredient. Drake. That is not shade. That is a receipt printed in stereo. Drake also referenced Tia Kemp, the mother of one of his sons. Around the same time, Tia Kemp did a podcast run that lit up the internet with fresh material. Drake even joked, playfully, that Tia Kemp was his goat. And after the unfollow, his former partner Christina Mackey posted photos of VIP tickets and front row seats to a sold-out Drake show. Timing that everybody noticed. Nobody said out loud what everybody was thinking. But everybody was thinking it. Rick Ross swung back with champagne moments, complete with a full music video. He revived the ghostwriter narrative. He sampled Drake's own voice for an outro. He roasted his appearance. He posted memes accusing Drake of cosmetic surgery, of a nose job, of edited abs, of texting him with excuses. He posted what he claimed were private messages. Drake fired back that Ross had gone loopy from not eating, that he was performing at proms for a paycheck, that he was now, quote, one nosy goof. Then Drake did the thing that made this feud different from every other rap feud. Drake attacked the real estate. Drake implied the land under the Miami mansion was not fully his. Drake called the whole property the Miami Starter Pack. That is the exact moment the beef stopped being about music. Because the second Drake dragged the lifestyle itself into the fight, he was not just dissing a rapper. He was attacking the myth. Because Rozay's whole brand is lifestyle. His whole product is the fantasy of the biggest boss. When Drake mocked the estate, he was not throwing a punch at a song. He was throwing a punch at the marketing. And the marketing is the entire company. Then came Vancouver. July of 2024. The Miami rapper performed at Ignite Music Festival, and to cap his set, his DJ played Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us. In Drake's home country. That decision detonated a chain reaction. Fights near the stage. Security dragging bodies off the ground. Video circulating within minutes. Millions of views before the sun came up. One of his associates knocked unconscious in the chaos. And when he was asked about it afterward, all he said was that security had told him he probably should not have been there. That was the whole quote. That was the entire debrief. From a man whose brand is built on being untouchable. Security told him he should not have been there. Drake did not let it die. Drake later referenced the incident in a bar that layered 3 meanings on top of each other. He wrapped it inside a TLC reference. Meaning 1, the wrestling event where fighters get put through tables. Meaning 2, the R&B group with members named Chili and Left Eye. Meaning 3, tender loving care. The line pointed directly at the fact that the boss got hit on the left side of his face after playing Not Like Us. 3 punchlines wrapped inside 1 line. That is the kind of bar that stops a career on impact. And Drake threw it in the middle of a verse. 50 Cent circled overhead the whole time. 50 has been recycling the corrections officer photo, the ex-girlfriend accusations, and the pig iron jokes for over a decade. He does not need new material. He just needs to keep the old material breathing. And in 2026, 50 dropped a Diddy documentary that dominated streaming charts for weeks. He piled on Ross over the Vancouver footage. He posted Kemp clips laughing. When Rozay was asked directly whether he and 50 were ever cool, he said no. Not since day one. Then he tried to pivot, joking about 50's fashion, before throwing a real shot. He said 50 does not own his masters, that Eminem and Dr. Dre essentially rescued 50's career, and that the Miami rapper built his own from slip and slide up with nobody handing him anything. And then he casually mentioned that 50 apparently lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. Cute bar. But 50 has been living inside his head rent-free for so long that a 2-bedroom crack barely registered. Then the emergency landing happened. Days after the boss posted a video telling Drake to be safe on his old jet, joking that Drake's plane was a 1978 cargo model gifted to him for promotional reasons, his own private jet made an emergency landing in Dallas. Everybody survived. But the photos raced across the internet inside minutes. And Drake, allegedly, was seen liking a post about it. Rozay tried to laugh it off, joking that Drake's fighter jets had shot him down. It did not work. The joke about Drake's jet had aged into a piece of prophecy. And the internet does not forgive prophecy that fires backwards. You want to know what the biggest sign of trouble actually is? It is not any single one of these moments. It is the tour. The Port of Miami 20th anniversary run was being promoted. And photos started leaking. Rows of empty seats. Buy one get one 50% off ticket deals. Discounts that ordinarily do not touch an artist of his stature. When Drake reacted online, allegedly, the internet piled on again. Then came flight tracking data that reportedly showed his private jet had been sitting inactive for weeks before the commercial flight photo, and while nothing was ever officially confirmed, the timing detonated the theories. Then, in perfect narrative timing, Drake dropped a music video filmed next to his own private jet. Cinematic. Deliberate. A calculated visual reply that did not need a lyric. And in the middle of it, the long-awaited solo album set in stone got pushed back. Ross posted a caption. Iceman melted, stone lasts eternity. Great line. Weak timing. Because if stone lasts eternity, why does the release date keep moving? A lot of people argued the delay was smart business. That may even be true. But smart business is not the story people are telling right now. The story people are telling right now is that Rick Ross is out of ammunition. And when you have spent 20 years selling the world the fantasy of unlimited ammunition, running out is the only thing you are never allowed to do. Now, before we go one step further, let me be very clear. Calling him broke, in the literal financial sense, would be a stretch. He has built out Wingstop franchises. He has real estate holdings. He has ventures, partnerships, endorsements. He has told interviewers that he runs at least 25 different ventures, that he flies to Dubai one week and Canada the next, that a single strip club performance can cover a year of expenses. On any spreadsheet, he is fine. He is more than fine. But that is exactly the point. This story was never really about the spreadsheet. It was about the perception. Because the biggest boss did not sell you a spreadsheet. He sold you a legend. And legends do not survive on paperwork. Legends survive on belief. And belief, once cracked, is almost impossible to weld back together. That is why every explanation he offers right now sounds louder than it should. The Wi-Fi upgrade on the jet. The Colombia trip to see Trick Daddy. The tour discount as promotion. The album delay as strategy. Any one of those explanations on its own is completely believable. All of them together, arriving in the same week, feel like a man rearranging chairs on a deck that is starting to tilt. He could pull up a bank statement tomorrow. He could show every account. And it would not fully close this narrative. Because the story is no longer about the money. The story is about whether the audience still believes the man who told them the story in the first place. And that is the deepest cut of this entire situation. This is not a beef Rick Ross lost. This is a mythology he can no longer defend. Because the myth of the biggest boss was never really the mansion or the jet or the emeralds. The myth was that none of it could ever be questioned. Once the questions start, the myth starts to leak. And a leaking myth is not a myth anymore. It is just a story people used to tell. Now stack it all one more time. Because this is the picture the internet is looking at right now. Fake watch accusations. Fake diamond jokes. A 2-decade-old corrections officer chapter with a paper trail that contradicts his own version. A borrowed name still contested in the courts of public opinion. A ghostwriter narrative that will not die. A hometown DMX critique now aging into prophecy. A friendship with Drake incinerated. A live physical altercation in Vancouver. A public real estate mocking from the biggest streaming artist on the planet. A jet that stopped moving. A tour cutting prices. An album pushed back. A commercial flight photo turned into a meme. A 50 Cent piling on with a decade of ammunition. A Kemp podcast tour. A Christina Mackey Drake concert appearance. Every single one of those items is survivable. 10 of them arriving inside the same news cycle are not. So, where does this leave the Miami legend? Financially, probably fine. Publicly, in the deepest hole of his entire career. He is now in damage control mode. And you can hear it in every interview. The tone has shifted. The swagger is more careful. The jokes are preloaded. The explanations arrive faster than the accusations. That is not the biggest boss. That is a man managing a crisis. And the audience can feel that difference, even when they cannot articulate it. That is why the memes are not stopping. That is why the clips are not aging out. That is why every new appearance from Rozay is now processed by the internet as evidence rather than entertainment. The final question is not whether Rick Ross is broke. The final question is whether the biggest boss persona can ever come back. And the honest answer is that once cracks like this start showing in public, no amount of clarification stitches them all the way shut. He could win a Grammy tomorrow. He could drop a classic solo album next month. And a piece of this cycle would still live in the archive forever. Because the internet has already decided which story it wants to tell. The story is Rozay the myth ran into Rozay the man, and the man could not carry the myth anymore. So here is the real ending. Rick Ross has spent 20 years telling the world he is a monument. This month, the monument stumbled. The world watched it stumble. And the world will remember. He may not be broke. But the fantasy of the biggest boss, the one that made every hook land, every mansion shot glow, every emerald sparkle a little brighter, that fantasy is not what it was. And if he wants that fantasy back, he is going to have to rebuild it inside a version of the internet that does not forgive myths anymore. So what do you think? Is Rick Ross going through a rough patch that fades in 6 months, or is this the permanent dent that the biggest boss persona never comes back from? Drop your verdict in the comments, because I am reading every single one, and the next breakdown is coming faster than you think. If you made it this far, you're already ahead of the curve, so smash that like, tap subscribe, and turn on notifications so the algorithm knows to bring you the next chapter of this saga the second it breaks. And if you want to know why the next name on the list is already trembling, the next video is waiting for you on your screen right now. Do not blink. Do not scroll. Just tap it. Because trust me, the next story is even worse than this one.